points. Remember we said how power was passing from the ground to the launcher to make her autonomous. Well, this phase, the ignition phase, is already carried out by the onboard computer. Here's what to watch for. It begins when those cryogenic arms, the yellow bars, will pull back at -5 seconds when the DDO says 5. At 0, he will call out allumage, which is ignition, and the main engine will light. But we don't lift off quite yet. Count to 7. For 7 seconds, the computers are checking the performance in the main engine while it's burning on the pad. They'll do it twice to confirm it, and then give the order, if all is okay, for ignition of the boosters. Final countdown.
À tous de DDO, attention pour le décompte final. Dix, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, unité, top, allumage Vulcain. Allumage EAP, décollage.
Wow, beautiful pictures again of Ariane coming roaring off the pad, leaving a trail of gold. I think we've lost her in the clouds. There she is. Did you see the cryo arms open at -5? Did you count to 7?
Tous les paramètres sont nominaux.
Everything is on. French Guiana, weighing 775 tons right now. She's burning 5 tons of fuel per second, if you can believe that. 2.5 tons in each booster, and the core stage burning an additional 300 kilograms of fuel per second. She is following the program in the onboard computer, which is located in the vehicle equipment bay below the satellites, which gives all the orders, including stage separation. We'll soon begin to see those. We're in the first of 4 flight phases for Ariane. The first 3 are powered. The last is not. We'll describe each in turn so you can follow Ariane as she heads east across the Atlantic to separate the passengers over the east coast of Africa and over the Indian Ocean. Flight phases are right now, the main engine and the 2 boosters are burning. Boosters will burn for another 20 seconds roughly. Then the main engine will burn alone for about 9 minutes. Then the upper stage will burn alone for about 16 minutes. And the final flight phase, not powered, we'll get back to that when it happens. Basically, we're using the simple solid propulsion in the boosters to get off the ground, away from the pull of the Earth, and the more complex liquid propulsion, cryogenics, to obtain speed and performance. We're waiting for confirmation of the booster separation. You'll be able to see that.
Des étages d'accélération à poudre.
There it is. The DDO has just called that. You can see the 2 boosters falling away, leaving their vapor trail. In the middle is the core stage, Ariane, continuing to burn. Nice shots.
Tous les paramètres à bord sont nominaux.
The boosters will fall 500 kilometers from shore in a protected area. Having done their job, we're now in the second powered flight phase, the main engine.
La trajectoire est normale.
We're coming up on separation of the fairing. Just before we do, take a look at the left-hand side of your screen, the upper left, the cursor crawling up the line. That's actually 2 lines. One is superimposed on another, the optimum trajectory and the real-time trajectory, as long as they're one and the same, or right where we should be. Below that, 2 lines, A and V. A is our altitude. You see we're climbing. V is our speed. We need between 8 and 9 kilometers per second to inject the satellites. So watch the numbers. The DDO has just said that the fairing has been jettisoned. That's coming right on time. Exposing Amazonas 3. Now you can see the black and blue box on the right. The fairing protects the payload from shocks during Ariane's ascent through the atmosphere. Once we leave the atmosphere at about 100 kilometers up, we don't need it anymore. And we can drop the weight, which is about 500 kilos. The core stage, basically a big propellant tank with the engine. It uses cryogenic propellant. You've heard that word before. Cryogenics offer certain advantages over storable propellant, which is the other option, namely better performance. They can also be turned off and on, and its motors can be reignited. and can function longer, and we can see that with the upper stage, which is reignitable on the Ariane, and with the fourth stage called the frigate with the Soyuz. Ariane 1 to 4, previous models, owed their success mainly to storable propellant, not cryogenics. They're fuels that are kept in ambient temperature and don't evaporate like cold cryogenic does, and you saw that before liftoff with the constant topping up we needed. Storable propellant is also cheaper, but cryogenics offer better performance. You can see Amazonas exposed to the elements. Below that is a black bell-shaped structure. That's the Silda, the carrying structure, inside of which is our second passenger. Next up, the latest in a series of profiles of space professions here at the Space Base. Well, what is telemetry? It's call it measuring from a distance. You see the tele, the Greek prefix, tele, like in television. There are over 1,500 parameters to measure, all indicators of Ariane's health in flight. We analyze some of these data in real time. Other are examined after the flight to find out how the vehicle has performed. They've recorded her motor ignitions, motor shutdowns, stage separations, all of that. So you can imagine the enormous archive this means, giving Arianespace an access to a wealth of technical information after over 200 flights of the Ariane family. Coming up on the end of the lower stage burn, there are 3 orders given by the onboard computer. There we just got confirmation by the DDO. 3 orders given by the onboard computer in about 12 seconds. Extinction of the lower stage. And separation of the lower stage, and then ignition of the upper stage. So we're now in the third and final powered flight phase. Second stage is burning on a single engine like the first stage. It carries a lot less fuel, though, 12 tons of liquid oxygen and 2.5 tons of liquid hydrogen. It'll burn in 16 minutes. The first stage carried 175 tons. We're lifting over 9.5 tons of hardware tonight with our 2 satellites. And remember, that's only possible with the heavy lift Ariane 5, the sole commercial of the mission in a moment. But for now, the latest news from Arianespace. December, we can begin to focus on the satellites. Amazonas first. Amazonas 3 will cover the Americas, and they're getting her into orbit for the 2014 Football World Cup and the 2016 Olympics, both from Brazil, of course. Hispasat communication satellites are located in 3 orbital positions. There's a transatlantic slot at 30 degrees west, where Hispasat 1C, DE, and SpainSat are. There's an American position at 61 degrees west, where Amazonas 1 and 2 are, and where Amazonas 3 tonight will eventually be placed. And there's an eastern position at 29 east, where X-Star is. The last Hispasat launch for Ariane, Flight 199, December 2010, was Hispasat 1E, also built, by the way, by SS Loral, who likewise built X-Star and SpainSat. More coming up after this, a look at Amazonas 3 with Antonio Abad, the Satellite Mission Director. With a totally second downrange tracking station, it's in the mid-Atlantic Ascension Island, tiny island in the South Atlantic, 10 square meters belonging to the UK. Used to be a NASA station. The upper stage will burn another 11 minutes roughly. You see our speed, 774 kilometers per second. The satellites will be separated when the launcher is moving at somewhere between 8 and 9 kilometers per second, as we mentioned. That is close to the speed at which the Earth turns. 10 kilometers per second, or 36,000 kilometers an hour. Once they're released by Ariane, the satellites get to that speed and to their proper altitude by firing their apogee motors. These motor firings are part of their early operations, usually occurring a few days after separation, and we'll come back to that after each satellite separation. You can find out more now about Hispasat in our next film. We'll be back with more of the mission. And the people from Azerbaijan in blue turquoise standing, cheering. There you have the final good news. Ariane 5 successfully releasing her second passenger, Azerspace Africa Sat 1A, buoyant here in Jupiter and all across the Space Center, and at all the points and posts where people are working or following the launcher. And the satellite's work just beginning, or soon will be, for all the different ground stations and other centers around the world where the satellite's first maneuvers are being monitored. So from the tense minutes just moments ago, you can see the change of mood here in Jupiter, and this is echoed around the world at all the outposts and offices where people involved in the two satellite projects are following the happy outcome of events. We're waiting for a couple of... Here's our first launch replay. You can watch again those exciting images of Ariane's ignition and liftoff as they happened half an hour ago. That's the first of a series of replays we hope to have for you from the different observation sites on the base. There are 5 or 6 sites. Here's number 2. We're going to go to the speeches. Jean-Yves Le Gall will make the first speech. Mr. Le Gall.